Hello, Tamara. Welcome to the Soul Aligned Self Care Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to have this wonderful conversation and we can pour into each other as, we learn and delve in about information about burnout, right?
Yes, yes. And most of the people that do listen to the podcast are either in a state of burnout, recovering
Mhm.
from burnout, or just stressed, anxious, so this will be really, really helpful to them. And I'm always looking to learn more for myself also. So if you could just share, I'm really curious. So you're a doctor and I'm very curious about how you got into, I guess I would label you a self-care expert. I don't know if you label yourself that, but how did you get into that? Because I don't feel like I come across that very often when I'm running into doctors.
Absolutely. That's a great question, right? So I got into this space, this energy wave of self-care. It really started out a little bit before the pandemic. So around 2019, as an ER doc, I'm here and I'm like, okay, at times you feel like you've worked so hard to get to that point in life, to get to that career, right? And you're there,
Mhm.
and then after a while, you're like, is this it? And you're like, okay, there has to be more that I can contribute to the world. And, from the outside, it might look like, well, what else can you want to contribute? You're already a doctor, especially you're an ER doc. Like, what else do you want to do? But I kind of felt like there's more that I could do. So I started to delve a lot into personal development. Had no idea that that's really what I was doing. So got into the space, reading a lot more and getting into the power of the morning routine and realizing like, whoa, I'm feeling so much better, have so much energy, got into the space of gratitude practice and, mindfulness. And I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. Like, why isn't everybody doing this? But then the pandemic hit. And during the pandemic, I'm like thriving. I joined a community of like-minded people and I'm here thriving. And even my medical director, when, he sat me down and he was like, as opposed to your colleagues, you're really thriving or doing well and managing this whole pandemic thing, very well. And if, think about it, I'm an ER doc, and the worst thing that can be happening during that time, and like, why was I thriving? And that's when I really started to look back and say, what was it that I did differently than probably a lot of my colleagues? And I realized it was all that personal development. And so it made me put together in my mind that this is actually a set of tools that we have in our arsenal that we can use to get through these hard times. And it's even best if we use it during the times when it's not the hard time, right? So that
Hmm.
when those hard times do develop, you already have things that you can do to not make it as challenging. So that's how I got into this space. And as most people, once you find and you learn about something and it's working well for you, you're like, let me tell everybody. And that's how I continued along on that journey.
Yeah, I think that's really an important point that you made is to do it even when you don't need to do it because you build up that resilience. You know what I mean? It's almost like you create this space for yourself where you can respond a whole lot better to more stress because you're taking care of yourself. So it's almost like you're filling your cup and you have some on reserves, and so
Mhm.
you could really instead of constantly reacting to life, you can respond to life.
Absolutely.
So is that where you are caring docs came from? Is that where that came from? Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So URCaring Docs merged in 2020. Initially, I thought, okay, the same thing. What am I going to give? What else can I give out to the world? Maybe I'll do an urgent care. But working as an ER doc and then in my time off, thinking of doing additional work as an urgent care, I wasn't able to give the best of myself, right? And
Hmm.
I didn't realize that, hey, a burnout was going to happen. But I wanted to be able to do something in a way that I can have a larger impact versus just the immediate small impact of an urgent care. So although I started off doing URCaring Docs as an urgent care, I merged and I pivoted my company to be able to do speaking and doing coaching. And from then on, and mentoring, and from then on it just really took off, and that's the space that I am in. So I speak on a lot of different stages, and I speak about burnout.
Hmm.
Burnout is a product of the whole stress, and untapped stress, especially in the workplace, that's where it leads to. So that's how URCaring Docs has merged into speaking and coaching, which is what I do now.
So, yeah, let's get into that. So, one of the things that I talk about very often is that when I was experiencing burnout and I just really, really tanked, I was unaware that I was headed in that direction because I was young. Um, I was 39 when I had the vertebral dissection and the stroke, and then I was also in the best shape of my life. And so what I was doing was I was going through a divorce, and in order to deal with like my anger and stuff like that, I was working out a lot. And what I didn't
Mhm.
realize is that I was actually heightening my anxiety by the type of workouts I was doing. That like
Okay.
movement can be really good to release stress and anxiety, but not if you're doing the wrong type of movement. And I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
So I thought I was doing so good. I was in great shape. I ate pretty well. And so I was in complete shock when this happened to me because I was like, I thought I could
Mhm.
handle this. I'm young. I can handle this. And so I would say, yes, I was ignoring some of the signs, but I would also say I was I was a single mom with three kids. I was working a high stress sales job. So I think I was ignoring and pushing things back a little bit. For everybody listening today, what could be a good way to notice some of the signs? What are some of the signs that you're heading into that burnout?
Absolutely. Great question. Now, the thing about burnout that people hear, and they hear burnout and they're thinking like, oh my gosh, did this just happen to me? But as you mentioned, there are phases that occurs during burnout. Now, phase one is what we call the honeymoon phase. So during that time, and for us to even truly understand, let's go through the definition. Definition of burnout is a psychological response to chronic workplace stress. So of course it affects the other parts of our life, but it really starts with, the chronic stress of the workplace. So phase one, when we're talking about the honeymoon phase, you are excited and you're feeling like you're having this great impact on the job and the impact that you're going to have on the work, right? So you are going in with excitement and with joy. Now, the second phase is what we call the onset of stress. During that time, you start to feel a little bit of those what we say in medicine psychosomatic symptoms, which is the symptoms where your mind and your body, you're manifesting symptoms in your body based on what's going on in your mind, but medically, you're not being able to find the answers. So this is not to say that, oh my God, it's in your head. No, it's not in your head. It starts there because we're stressed and we're really dealing with this onset of stress, but the headaches and the abdominal pains and the reflux and the body aches, they're there too, right? And that's the somatic, that's the body portion of what's going on. Now, when that is unmanaged and we continue to ignore that, then we move on to what we call the chronic phase. So that chronic phase of that stress, that chronic stress phase, yeah, some of those issues where we are feeling overwhelmed. You notice that your mood is changing, and then you notice that you're feeling as if you're not having any control, right? And you are now, that slight headache is now moving into I'm not sleeping well, I'm not eating well, and the upset stomach moves to just really abdominal pain. The little bit of fatigue is now chronic fatigue. And then you move to the true burnout phase. And that phase is when it exhibits what I call the 3Ds. So you get the decreased sense of accomplishment where no matter what you do, you don't feel fulfilled. And what is the point of doing anything in life if you don't get a little bit of enjoyment from it, right? So that's the
Hmm.
decreased sense of accomplishment. Then you get the depleted energy. That's the sheer exhaustion. I get up and I can't all I'm thinking about is when I get to go back to sleep, right? But life is still going on. You still have family to feed, you still have work you have to get done, you still have all these responsibilities, but your brain is just so overwhelmed and exhausted that you're just like dragging yourself. You're starting to bargain with yourself, right? Okay, that's when you're in the car in front of your job and you're telling yourself, yes, I know I can do this. I can do this. I can just get in there, just do my work, and I can get out and I can get back home and I can get some rest, right? That's the sheer exhaustion. And then you also have the portion when you're getting very cynical, right? So that's where you're cynical around, anything that's going on. If anyone's asking you to do anything, you're just like, ugh, whatever. And you start saying those, it is what it is. Like, ugh, just give me whatever it is I need to do, just so I can just get it done. So those are the things that's going on when you're in that burnout phase. You're just like, oh, but as bad as burnout is, there's another phase, in which is the phase where I think you and I, when we're working with our clients, this is the phase we're trying to prevent them from getting to, which is that critical phase, and it's that crisis phase. So that crisis phase is the phase where it's very thin line between that and actual psychiatric illness. So it's that thin line in the crisis phase where we're having our depression symptoms. We're having the hopelessness, the helplessness, the people who are feeling like no matter what I do, there's nothing's going to change. And we are here, you and I as coaches and people who are helping people to say that no, it is possible to have the life that you want, the life of your dream. And so those are the phases of burnout, and those are the phases that are just so close to the helpless and the hopeless phase, where we try to undo all of that, because the other side of that is that depression, the other side is the anxiety, and the other side is the suicidal thoughts, the other side is the suicidal attempts, which is what we don't want from anyone who's dealing with burnout. So those are what's happened.
Yeah, and I would say um, I never really experienced depression, but I did have a lot of anxiety, and I think that was
Mhm.
just like the tendency of my personality.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I would definitely note to people that all those things that you're feeling in your body are that's to process that as information. I always tell people, I'm like, picture it as like when you're on your computer and you get that pop up for like the malware, or like, oh, there's a
Mhm.
virus, and it's like warning, and you have to like do something about it. It's like all those feelings that we get are definitely trying to tell us something, and we need to just like figure out what it's trying to tell us, instead of like what I did was like, just I don't have time for that, I have to take
Yeah,
care
you
of
just
three
hit that X,
kids.
right?
Yeah, so it wasn't just the career for me, which was like I sold real estate at the time, so it's like 100% commission, so you're just like going, going, going. But then I still had to take care of three kids by myself, and so I didn't have like that reprieve. And
Mhm.
the part where you said no matter what you do, you're like, I always felt like I was half-assing everything. Nothing ever
Mhm.
felt like I was putting, and I just kind of got used to that at some point, because I was like, this is impossible what I'm doing. So it's just going to be half-assed. And so, yeah, I think that paying attention to those warning signs is so important. And um, going back to the personality thing. So,
Mhm.
why do you think certain personalities tend to, I don't know if it's move towards burnout quicker or suffer from burnout more?
Yeah, absolutely. And we really think about even what you mentioned there when you were saying like suffered more from anxiety and it's more
Mhm.
like your personality. When we think about our different personalities, especially we'll say more who are like type A, you're
Yes.
definitely prone to, which is what most of us are prone to, the anxiety and the depression and burnout within itself. And why? Because if 40% got me here, then 75% will definitely get me there. And so we give more and we do more. And sometimes we do more expecting the return on investment to equal the energy input that we did. And we know that that's not how life works, right? But because of our inherent personality to do more and expect more, we now put ourselves in a position we're predisposed to burnout, right? So
Hmm.
we're working harder. And what is the reward for working harder? You're saying, well, I'll get promoted or, I'll get recognized. But the reward for working harder is getting more work. So thank
Hmm.
you so much for working hard. Here's some more work.
Hmm. Yeah, isn't that's
And
true.
and if you are looking for that sense of accomplishment, you probably are not getting it. If you're looking for that recognition, maybe you're not getting that recognition. But you said, you know what? Maybe instead of speaking up and saying, like, I would like some recognition for what I'm doing, you think, you know what? If I work harder, they cannot ignore me and I will do better. And so you give more and more and more with expectations of getting that return on investment. And if you do not get it, then you start to get into that phase where you're like, what's the use, right? What
Hmm.
is the point? And that you said, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not getting any return on this. I'm not being recognized for this. So what is the point? But internally, you still feel that sense of lack of accomplishment, right? And you internalize that if you're not, especially if you're not expressing it. And most of us, we're very proud. So I'm not going to tell you. I'm like, you should know. How many of us? You should understand. Like, can't you see all the work that I'm doing? You should be recognizing me because I'm doing more work than A, B, C, and D person.
Hmm.
That's not how life goes, and that's not how life is. And so we continue giving, giving until we burn out. And it's not until we hit burnout that we start to acknowledge that all of this might not have the effect, or it could have happened a different way had I done things differently. So I think that your personality types definitely predisposes you to burnout.
Yeah. And I think if people just made the small mindset shift, realizing
Mhm.
that if they invested all that time in themselves, like taking care of themselves at that highest level, then
Mhm.
they get to, it's not selfish. It's then you get to show up as that higher version of yourself. Then you're going, you're the part, you can show up that way for your partner. You could show up that way for your kids. You could show up that way for your career or your business. And so
Mhm.
self-care, putting that first, putting yourself first is not selfish. It actually serves
Absolutely.
everyone. And so
Absolutely.
it's definitely, you get a much better return on investment than putting work in, especially when you're working for somebody else. Um,
Mhm.
and I remember when I was selling real estate, I had to, after a couple of years, I learned I had to set boundaries because it's like you don't get paid unless you work. And then you're afraid to take time off because you're afraid you're going to get out of that loop of bringing that money in. And so I had to actually set boundaries with myself in order
Mhm.
to be able to spend the time with my kids and
Yeah.
do the things that were important, all the reasons that I went into real estate in the first place, which was to spend more time with my kids. And so I think it's really interesting.
I love that you're like that reflection. It's like 100%. When we think about even self-care, and it says it in the word, caring for self. And I don't know how we move that care to being selfish when in order for us to give, we have to have something to give.
Hmm.
I remember talking to someone and they mentioned this, and I love this phrase. They said that I give from the saucer ministry. And at first I'm like, saucer, what are you talking about? And then she says the cup and the saucer, right? So the cup overflows into the saucer. So whatever is in the saucer, that's what I give. So my cup is always full. And I thought,
Hmm. That's,
brilliant,
yes.
brilliant.
Yeah, it
So
is brilliant.
it's not that I am now depleting myself. It's I'm always full. I'm
Hmm.
always full. And you will always get something. Once I invest in myself, then you'll always get the best of me, right?
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. And when we're able to show up as that higher version of ourselves, then we also teach other people that this is something that's okay to do. And we also teach people, we show people how we want to be treated. So
Yeah.
there's so many return on investments when it comes to putting yourself first. And it's just a small mindset shift. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of people struggle with it, especially women, because we're taught to take care and nurture and do these things from a young age. I see this shifting in the younger generations, but um, I I think that it's just like this societal expectation, and a
Mhm.
lot of us wear that burnout with a badge of honor. Like, oh,
Don't we?
she's so selfless. Like she just does
She
everything for
gave
her
it her
children.
all.
Yeah, she's eating the chicken nuggets at the sink and licking the crumbs off the counter, but she knows she's feeding her kids and she's cooking dinner for everybody, you know.
Yes.
So it's like just making that one mindset shift, I think, can be life changing for a lot of people.
Mhm.
But on top of that, there's, as you were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, there's so many different tools that you can use to build your resilience. So, do
Mhm.
you have some that you can share with the audience that you think are very helpful?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, of course, we talked about mindfulness, and we talked about breathing tech. Well, breathing exercise is something that I think that is very powerful.
Yes.
Um, Gratitude practice is something that's powerful, and big thing too, a morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you hear that, and you might be thinking, like, what's so great about a morning routine? But I even heard you saying that about responding versus reacting. The way you start your day is the way that you can take charge of the rest of the hours of the day, right? So just those few minutes can help you to take charge of the rest of the hours. So the morning routine is something that I teach a lot whenever, even when I'm speaking or even when I'm doing our coaching, because it's just such a powerful tool. And most of the time, we think our morning routine begins that morning, but it actually begins the night before. A lot of people, we use our cell phone as our alarms. I do. I can't,
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell the last time I bought an alarm clock. Like, no, because, I use my cell phone. But another thing that we use our cell phone to do is jump on social media immediately. Another thing we do on our cell phones is to immediately read the news or to watch whatever is the latest that's going on. But if we invest in our minds the first thing in the morning, then we can reduce that anxiety and that stress throughout the day, and we can enter into that day with power and control, and we can respond to the challenges of the day versus reacting to it. So how does that work? Night before, you put your cell phone away. Not you put your cell phone at the side of the bed. No, it needs to be across the room. Or for some people, if you're really like on your A game, you put it in another room
Yeah.
that you can still listen and hear that alarm. When that alarm goes off, you get up and you walk. Once you get up and start to walk across the room or to the next room to pick that alarm up, there's a less likely chance that you're going to hit that snooze button because you're already up and you're in motion, right? So if you've had problem being like a snooze queen, like I did, like for many, many years, like 5 more minutes, 3 more minutes. Okay, 1 more minute. Like, okay, really, what's that 1 minute gonna do? Well, we don't, but we like it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
just implementing that, putting the phone across the room as the in the morning when it goes off, you get up, you start walking, and boom, you start the day, right? So you're starting the day and you are pouring in all the positive things that you can into your mind. If you're a spiritual person, like I'm a spiritual person, it's the first thing I go to my Bible and I'm started reading the Bible, right? And then after that, you listen to the podcast. Listen to the podcast is infusing you with things to build your mind, your body, and your spirit, right? So listen to things that are going to enhance you, not things that are going to infuse you with fear and anxiety, but infuse you with power and enrichment.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've done that and you've also, incorporated movement, then you enter into your day. Then you can read that email.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can look at that social media post. Why? Because your brain is already fortified for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So that email that you are reading, where you got that, hey, I can't find this message that you sent me, and I told you to send it to me, and da da da. And at that point, you're like, oh, attach, send,
Mm-hmm.
be attached, messages here, have a nice day. But if you enter into that day without fortifying your mind, and as soon as you wake up, you're sending that, you look at that email will irk you. And you're saying, well, I can't believe this person is sending me this email. I sent this to them a long time ago, and I don't understand why they keep asking me for the same thing. I've sent them 3 times. And then you send that off again with a nasty gram, right? And then throughout the day, you're thinking about that. I can't believe that person sent me that email, 8 o'clock, 9:30. I still can't believe they sent me that email at 12:30. Can you believe they sent me that email at 2:45? And again, this morning, they sent me that email. So now your entire day has been wrapped around and emotionally reacting to an email that was sent at 7 o'clock in the morning. And you've used 12 hours of your day as opposed to being able to just respond at 8:45 after you finished everything and built and fortified your mind, send that email off, and it's not even a thought in your mind
Mm-hmm.
any longer. How powerful.
Yeah, very powerful. And it just like you said, how you start your morning is really the energy that you're going to carry throughout your day. And so by being able to, like, as you said, respond later instead of being stuck in that stress loop of continuously letting it build. Now,
Yeah.
like another effect of that stress loop is that it tires you down. It's taking up space in your
Yes.
brain,
Mhm.
it's like it does all these things to you that you don't even realize. I use a similar example where I'm like, um, when you have like the dry cleaning in the backseat of your car that you
Mhm.
have to bring in, and you're like, well, I'm going to bring that in the morning. And I talk about decluttering to reduce stress. So that's like part of the
Mhm.
decluttering method is like getting how to get stuff done so it's not stress looping in your
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. It's not
So
stuck here.
yeah, yeah. And so it's like get it out of your head by getting it done. But
Mhm.
if you don't get it done, what does it do? Like then you beat yourself up because you forgot to drop it off on the way to work. Then you're
Mhm.
going to just do it at lunch. But then at lunch you go out with your colleagues at work, and then you're like, oh my God, I still didn't do it. And then you're on the way home and you forget to do it. And then you're going to bed and you're still thinking about it. And you're like, oh, I have to do it. So it's taking up that space and it's using that
Mhm.
energy because you have to keep it like looping
At the
in your
top.
head.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
perseverating.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like starting your morning off with a positive morning routine. That's so important. That's very important to me also. And it changes too. Like I do different things at different times, and I kind of go with the flow, but it usually always involves gratitude,
Mhm.
meditation, or right now, breath work is like a big deal for me.
Mhm.
And I do like journaling. And so it's really, you got to see what works for you. But yeah,
Yes.
not going on the phone is just,
Yeah,
yes.
the first thing in the morning.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
can't do that.
Absolutely not.
Now, don't you have some a method that you call the pause technique?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, can you share
So,
that?
yeah, absolutely. So, the pause technique is a way for you to reduce stress quickly within 2 to 5 minutes when it comes upon you suddenly, especially say during the middle of the day. Now you're
Hmm.
going about your day and everything's going well. You're just so excited. You're like, oh, I'm having a great day. And boom, you might get this response or call or some type of maybe another email, that's asking for something that needs to be done urgently. Like, okay, I need this within the next like hour and a half. And this came out of the blue. You were not expecting it. And so it's throwing you off your game. Now, what is it that you're going to do? You're going to stay flustered, or are you going to pull back control? So the pause technique is a way for you to pull back control within 2 to 5 minutes. So we talked about different self-care techniques. The pause is how you incorporate that. So here is this. So for pause technique, the P is literally pausing. So
Hmm.
I just threw something upon you. Boom. I need this within an hour and a half. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. So the first thing you're going to do is pause. Okay, pause. And then A, you're going to acknowledge the stressor. What is that stressor? This deadline that got through upon me within an hour and a half. So you say it out loud, like, okay, I have a deadline that just got through upon me in an hour and a half. That's my stressor. So then you understand, how is that stressor affecting you? This is making me feel anxious, or it's making me feel sad, or I'm angry, or, what is it that you're feeling? Acknowledge that feeling. And then you understand how it's affecting you, right? And then S, you're going to set a self-care goal. So your self-care goal might say, okay, I'm going to get everything out of my head and I'm going to journal everything that's going through my thoughts within the next 30 seconds, or give myself a minute and a half to just get everything out. Because you might want to say some things, but you don't want to say it, but you can write
Yeah.
it out. Get it from your head to paper.
Yeah.
Another thing, as you mentioned, maybe you want to do a breathing exercise because this came upon you, it's making you anxious, right?
Hmm.
And so you might want to bring yourself back in control. And you said, okay, I'm going to do a quick breathing exercise. I'm going to set an alarm for 2 minutes and do a quick breathing exercise and bring back control. Tap into my parasympathetic system and just bring control. Or you might say, okay, you know what? This is something that I need to release this pent up energy. So I want to do some movement. So it's either 2 minutes, I'm going to walk around, or maybe dance, because
Mm.
I have a playlist of things that just changes my mood automatically. So I'm going to just play
Yes.
it and just jam to it. So then whatever it is, you set that self-care goal in the time. And then the most important part is the E, and that you execute it. Because a lot of times we said, okay, I'm gonna, as soon as this happens, I'm going to, but no, just set it and you execute it. Now,
Hmm.
within that time frame, 2 to 5 minutes, you have shifted your mind from the state of being anxious, from the state of being angry, from that state to another state where you're infused either gratitude or calm, but most importantly, you have now pulled back control. So that's the pause technique. Use it 2 to 5 minutes in the middle of the day to pull back control when something unexpectedly happens that's taking you out of control.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I
My
appreciate that. And I
pleasure.
think that all the listeners will really definitely take advantage of that because I think it's genius. I love it. So I think that's a good note to end on. But before we go, I would just like to ask you, I like to ask a little surprise question that has nothing to do with our topic.
Absolutely.
And tell us something about yourself that most people don't know about you.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. This is fun.
Okay, cool.
So when I was in high school, I was an extra in a movie that actually ended up being on Showtime. And how did I find out about this movie? In the middle, I was later in college,
Hmm.
and in the middle of the night, I woke up and I saw this movie and I said, wait a minute, I remember. But by the time we got to that phase, it already changed the name of the movie. And
Hmm.
when I auditioned and was an extra for it, it was called The Middle Child. But by the time
Okay.
it came out, it was called Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Okay. That is so much fun.
So I saw myself and it was like, wait a minute. But of course, everyone was asleep.
Hmm.
So
That's
I just had to say I was an extra in the movie and it came on. It was 1 o'clock in the morning and Showtime invited to show it.
that's so much fun. I love that. That's the first time I've ever heard one like that. That is really cool. So how can people connect with you? What's the best place for them to find you?
Absolutely. So the best place for you to find me is on my website and or on LinkedIn. So my website is URCaring Docs. That's URCaringDocs.com. You'll find everything about me, Dr. Beckford. And or if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd love if you do so. So at LinkedIn is Tamara Beckford MD or Dr. Tamara Beckford. Either way, you'll be able to see me and you'll see all the different content that I put out, which I do daily. So I'd love to connect with you and your listeners.
Excellent. I'll head over there and I'll connect with you right away. Thank
Mhm.
you so much for coming on and sharing all your knowledge with us and that pause technique. I love that. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for having me.